Fantastic. Thank you so much. And first of all, my apologies for having disrupted the agenda for this afternoon. I was just coming here with Pietro and Paolo, two colleagues from Accenture, and I got a call. I had to go back to the office to look at something that was happening. I don't want to disclose anything more, but obviously I had to manage something, but fortunately everything has been resolved. So I thought if it was possible to allow me to come back and to have the opportunity to talk to you. Probably I'm also between you and the wrap-up for the afternoon, so I will try to stick to the 20 minutes, even if I always say, and probably you can understand from my accent, it's very, very tricky when you leave the mic to an Italian. Even the most reserved and the shyest in the country, like me, could be dangerous. Yeah? So I could overrun, but the time is there, so I will try to stick to that. What I want to offer you is a bit the view from a telco, a network operator, in terms of how the needs of our customers and, in essence, the needs from us toward the rest of the industry are changing in time. So what are the challenges that we see as an industry? And probably for those of you that are not living in Australia, you can connect to several of them, but also to give you a little bit more the flavor of what is happening in Australia. I've joined TPG Telecom 4 years ago, exactly 4 years ago, and for me it was the first experience in the country. So let me pretend to have still a bit of fresh eyes, even if on the other side I feel already part of the furniture, so very welcome in the lucky country. So I will go through very quickly through few elements. So as I said, trying to still have a bit of fresh eyes, how do I see structurally Australia, which means what is implicitly and explicitly the demand from our customers. And then from this, talking about something that I want to describe as polarities rather than challenges. Yeah? And I will come back to that in a second, why I try to use a different term. And then to look at this from the perspective, from the angle of TPG Telecom. And last but not least, to see how we embrace the new opportunities in terms of technology and enablers to the market. Yeah. So let me start from the context. So in essence, it's a little bit my surprise when I came to Australia. You could say the market, the telecommunications market, but in general terms, the structure of the demand from customers and the regulatory environment are presenting a country that could be assimilated in part to the US, the vastity of the geography, 75% of the surface of the US, but at the same time, a population that is close to, with all due respect, a mid-sized European country. Yeah? So a huge discrepancy between these two elements. And also, you can imagine what does it mean in terms of topography and topology of the network. Yeah? So when we talk about, for example, data center consolidations, yes, but up to a certain stage, because otherwise the latency that you introduce is still quite prohibitive in terms of the quality of service. So it drives also a cost of production that potentially is higher than in other realities. Customers are living in highly urbanized areas, so almost 90% of the population is residing in the urban areas, which again drives a demand that is very concentrated and then has also very high expectations. And I will come back to this in a second moment. But on the other side, all the attention to the regional and remote communities as well, that is particularly evident at this stage in the public perception. And last but not least, a regulatory environment that for me is very familiar, having worked for so many years in Europe, where I see, in essence, regulations here that are resonating very well with European regulations, so quite tight, to say the least. So in essence, you could say that this beautiful country, in essence, is wrapping up three different dimensions: a geographical dimension like a huge country, similar, for example, to the US or Canada, a European style to regulate the market, and the very high demand from the customers as well. Based on that, the reason why I'm talking about polarities and not challenges, because in my translation of the term challenge, I presume that a challenge can be addressed, not just faced, can be addressed and can be fixed. Yeah? While polarities are always something that you need to consider, and you need to understand the right balance for you. Where should you find your center position? Yeah? And trying to simplify what we face as a telecommunication operator, I would say there are at least 5 dimensions of that. The first one, as we know, very often our industry is identified as so-called high capex intensity. Yeah? So in essence, there is a huge demand to invest in always the next technology. But at the same time, the pressure of the cost of living is evident in our customers. So we are between a rock and a hard place. Should we pass the cost of this new investment to the consumer, yes or not, and all the tensions that are coming from this. The second, and unfortunately recent events in the country have in some way demonstrated some concern on emergency services. There is I would say, a huge expectation in terms of support to critical services, and rightfully it's so. But on the other side, our industry is not defined as critical in terms of infrastructure, so it's not equivalent to the power suppliers, for example, in the country. So we live again between these two polarities. The competition, and again, without highlighting anything new, coming to Australia, it's evident that Australia is the unique case where the government decided decades ago to go for a national broadband network, yeah? And clearly, they are wholesaling services, but in some segments, they are also directly competing with the network operators. And on the other side, there is also an incumbent, an ex-monopolist that is quite formidable. So for the second player and the third player in the market, it's becoming even more difficult to compete. And due to that, we also have taken some radical decisions on some of our assets. Regulatory, I was already mentioning before, definitely. Australia is at the forefront in some areas. On Monday, I will be in Canberra in front of the Senate Commission for a hearing around the universal outdoor mobile obligation. So there is a bill that is going to be discussed that will impose us to cover 100% of the geography of the country. This is the first case in the world. And again, the cost that these, even if obviously the LeoSat technology is supporting from this perspective, but is still immature, as you can imagine, is an extra burden. And last but not least, you could say as a technologist, I'm facing, and you are facing, the usual dilemma between the speed of innovation on one side, but on the other side, the fact that this could be risky, and maybe sometimes it's better to wait and to see if somebody else is braver, and then to be second and to leapfrog. So again, a big polarity. So all of these, I hope, is giving sense of what is the structural complexity for a network operator in Australia. TPG Telecom, just few seconds. Probably you know more, especially for the colleagues that are coming from abroad, some of our logos, or one in particular, rather than TPG Telecom, because TPG Telecom is the result of multiple mergers and acquisitions. From a mobile side, the most important was the merger between Vodafone and Three, or Hutchinson, Australia. So that became Vodafone Hutchinson, and for a while they operated under the Vodafone brand in the country. So we are still having a vast majority of our customers with the Vodafone brand. And by the way, obviously, we are allowed to progress on that. Vodafone is one of our shareholders. We have other brands that are local brands, including the TPG brand, that vice versa brought us all the fixed broadband assets as well, plus minor brands or very new brands that in the meantime we have also launched, like Felix Mobile, addressing different targets in the market. Yeah? So similar to other operators for some reasons, but however going through a phase of rationalization in terms of brands. So 2 years ago, for example, we had more than double compared to what you see on the chart today. We are the second largest telco in the fixed broadband space, and we are the third in mobile. Very often we are labeled as the third in the market, but in reality we forget about our second position in the fixed broadband, which is also very relevant. We proudly say that we are also one of the best employers in the country. Number 22 is not in the telco industry, is in absolute terms in the country, and absolutely the first in the telco industry. And our position has become more and more healthy from a financial perspective, especially thanks to the transformations that we have done in the last 12 months. To quickly wrap up and to tell you what are the challenges, but also the opportunities and the enablers that we want to embrace. Our strategy as a company is focused on 5 pillars. And some of you could say nothing new under the sun, because at the end of the day, you are talking about network, you are talking about the factory of your products and services, you talk about brands and product portfolio, you are talking about customers, obviously, and last but not least, you are talking about the structure of the company. So the fact that we want to be nimble, fast, simple, but also stronger in terms of the fundamentals. And last but not least, something that we value a lot, and is not just a slogan, is around a culture that is becoming more and more customer and people-centric. So how the technology function that I represent is supporting this. The beauty and the challenge of TPG Telecom is the realization that a few years ago, after the merger between Vodafone Hutchinson Australia and the TPG, the pre-existing TPG group, was that we were in a strategic quadrant that was very difficult to operate with. So we set up a number of large transformations with the well-known challenge that all those transformations had to run in parallel, which is, frankly speaking, in my experience, the first time I had to face it. So before, I was going from one transformation to another, sometimes in the network space, sometimes in the IT space or the infrastructural space, but one at a time. We had to take the tough decision to move fast in parallel, and very often I use the analogy of controlling many jumbo jets that are in flight at the same time. And by the way, you need to plan very carefully when you can take off, and you need to plan very carefully when you can land them on the ground at completion of the activities. So here there is a snapshot. The last message, because I'm already overrunning, is the fact that obviously we are embracing AI, but you see in the chart AI is 1 out of 12 of the enablers that we see from a technology perspective. So it's not the only one, and in order to do it right, you need a lot in terms of foundational elements before addressing the AI opportunity. So it's not just enough wrapping up technology solutions, systems, processes, but it really needs a transformation that is deep at the core. Some of these transformations have already been completed, others are just in flight and have to be completed. We are taking off AI now in a different way. So far it was very organic as an approach, and now we are moving to a more structured approach in terms of discipline, how we want to do. All of this is bringing us to the realization that our offering to the market is moving from pure connectivity, because differently from other telcos, we never embraced the ambition to become a techco, for example, but we wanted to stay close to our core and to our DNA as a connectivity provider. But now it's clear that with the AI advent, especially for our customers, we need to move to an outcome-based solution and offering. So I rushed a lot. Clearly, I could have spent hours to go through each of the building blocks. I hope I gave you a very quick snapshot. And again, thank you so much for having allowed me to come on stage later than expected this afternoon. Thank you.
Mille grazie.